Good day, everyone. This is Arugu Speaks on Arugu Insights. Today, we'll talk about the origin and development of Admiralty law. You know, it is tried that once the purpose of a thing is not known, the abuse of that thing is inevitable. And once the history of a thing is not understood or appreciated, knowing where we're coming from and the development we have made is a tough call. And so today, in form of summary, we will look at the history and origin of Admiralty law. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to travel with me across 3 millennia and 4 continents as we trace the living story of Admiralty law from the sun-drenched quays of ancient roads to the busy Admiralty registries of our very old Federal High Court, the High Court of Lagos State, the High Court of Abuja, the High Court of Port Harcourt, and other divisions of the Federal High Court in Nigeria. Let us begin where it all began, on the island of Rhodes today. Rhodes is in the country of Greece, in Europe. The merchants of Rhodes, the masters of the Mediterranean trade, created what is universally regarded as the first maritime code of the world, the famous Lex Rhodia, or the Rhodian Sea Law. This was an ancient maritime commercial code that originated on the island of Rhodes between the 7th and the 3rd centuries BC. At that time, Rhodes was the leading maritime and trading power in the Mediterranean. Although the original Rhodian text had been lost, its rules were so influential that they were adopted by Rome and preserved in Roman legal sources. Most importantly, in the Digest of Justinian, Book 14, Title 2, on the Rhodian law concerning jettisoning. The single most famous and enduring provision of the Lex Rhodia is the principle of general average through jettisoning. Hiatus. It is preserved almost verbatim in the Digest. Quote, if merchandise is thrown overboard for the sake of lightening the ship, what has been given for all shall be replaced by the contribution of all. End of quote. In modern terms, this means that when cargo or equivalent or equipment is deliberately sacrificed to save the ship and the remaining property during an emergency, such as a storm or pursuit, the loss is shared proportionally among everyone who benefited from the sacrifice. The ship owner or cargo owners and even those earning freight. Contribution under the Lex Rhodia was compulsory. Owners of saved cargo cannot refuse to pay their share. If they did, the shipmaster or other interested parties could bring a legal action to force what? Payment. The amount each party contributed was calculated in proportion to the value of the property they have saved. Whether they saved the ship, they will look at the value of the ship. Whether the surviving cargo, they will look at that. And the freight earnings, they will look at how much the person would have earned, then they will take part of it to settle. Goods that had been jettisoned were valued as they would have been worth at the destination port, not at the port of departure. Good logic, good reasoning. So the assessment was based on the value at the port of call and not at the port of departure. Okay, the rule applied only to intentional, voluntary sacrifices made for the common safety. Ordinary losses from the sea, such as leakage, spoilage, or damage without deliberate jettison, remain the individual owner's responsibility, today known as particular average. The shipmaster was granted clear authority to order jettison or other emergency measures, and his decision, if made for the general safety, was binding. Later, Roman practice extended the Rhodian principle beyond simple jettison to other deliberate expenses incurred for the common benefit, such as ransom paid to pirates or costs of intentionally running the ship aground to lighten it. Unpaid freight was also treated as an interest at risk and had to contribute. The Romans explicitly recognized the authority of Rhodian law. Even century after Rhodes lost its dominance, Roman courts applied the lex Rhodia whenever no specific Roman statute covered a maritime issue. The Romans explicitly recognized the authority of Rhodian law. Even centuries after Rhodes lost its influence, Roman courts applied the lex Rhodia whenever no specific Roman statute covered a maritime issue. The ancient Rhodian code, therefore, became one of the earliest examples of codified commercial law and remains the direct ancestor of the modern international rules on general average, including the famous York-Antwerp rules that govern shipping world today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is safe to conclude that from Rhodes, the flame passed to Rome, where maritime customs were absorbed into its iusentium, and special tribunals were created for sea cases. When the Western Empire fell, the light of systematic maritime law dimmed in Europe, only to be rekindled in the great trading cities of the Middle Ages. Between the 11th and the 14th centuries, a constellation of maritime code appeared across Europe, each shaped by the needs of merchants who could not wait for slow royal justice. Around 1160, in the Atlantic port of Oleron, judges compiled the rules of Oleron, 24 articles governing the Bordeaux wine trade that would later cross the Channel with Eleanor of Aquitaine and become the foundation of English maritime law. In the Mediterranean, the Consolato del Mar, compiled in Barcelona, became the Bible of Catalan and Italian merchants. On the Baltic, the merchants of Visby and the Hanseatic League produced their own ordinances. What united all these codes was their cosmopolitan character. They were not the law of any one king, but the common law of the sea, administered in special courts by merchants or by admirals. It is to England that we now turn. For it is in England that the institutional shape of modern Admiralty law was forged, often in fire and through centuries of bitter jurisdictional conflict. As early as 1340, Edward III began appointing admirals with power to decide all cases touching the sea. By the reign of Richard II, the Admiral Court was applying the civil law tradition of the continent, while the common law courts of the King's Bench and Common Pleas insisted that anything happening within the body of the county, even if on a ship tied to a wharf, belonged to them. The struggle lasted 500 years. Common law judges issued writs of prohibition. Admiralty judges ignored them. Parliaments passed statutes, first limiting, then expanding, then limiting again the admiral's jurisdiction. Only in the 19th century, through the Admiralty Courts Act of 1840 and 1860, was the battle finally resolved in favor of a modern specialist court applying international maritime law free from common law procedural shackles. Wherever the Union Jack flew, the Union Jack is the great flag of the United Kingdom, Great Britain. The High Court of Admiralty followed, carried by Vice Admiralty courts enabled in every British colony. In West Africa, the first such court opened in Sierra Leone in 1808, when Lagos was annexed in 1861 and made part of the Gold Coast colony. Its Supreme Court inherited Admiralty jurisdiction. After the amalgamation of Nigeria in 1914, amalgamation of the Northern and the Southern Protectorates in 1914 by Lord Lugard, the Supreme Court of Nigeria continued to exercise the powers of the Colonial Court of Admiralty under the Imperial Act of 1890, a statute that remained the foundation of Admiralty jurisdiction for almost the whole of the 20th century. Nigeria gained independence in 1960 and changed the Union Jack to the green, white, green flag, but not the law. The law didn't change. Nigeria retained the 1980 Act with its restrictive list of maritime claims and its archaic rules on actions in rem. Practitioners complained bitterly: no sister ship arrest, no jurisdiction over maritime lands arising after the ship left Nigerian waters, no Mareva injunctions. The situation became intolerable. Everything changed on the 30th of November 1991 when the military government promulgated the Admiralty Jurisdiction Decree, or number 59 of 1991. Easily famed to be the single most important piece of maritime legislation in Nigerian history. For the first time in our existence as a nation, Nigeria broke free from the straitjacket of 1890. The decree vested exclusive Admiralty jurisdiction, and the Federal High Court dramatically expanded the list of maritime claims, introduced sister ship and associated ship arrests, permitted actions in rem against cargo and freight, allowed Mareva injunctions even in aid of foreign proceedings, and in a provision that still sparks debate, declared that the English Admiralty law applicable in Nigeria is that which existed on 19 November 1963, the day Nigeria became a republic, subject always to Nigerian legislation and international world conventions. In the 1999 Constitution, copper fasting these reforms by inserting Admiralty into the exclusive legislative list. Look at the third schedule and later section 251 sub 1 sub G of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended, making it impossible for any state high court to encroach on maritime matters. Supporting legislation followed the Coastal and Inland Shipping Cabotage Act 2003, the Merchant Shipping Act 2007, the NIMASA Act 2007, and a steady stream of judicial decisions that have clarified and occasionally expanded the scope of our jurisdiction. We will discuss all of this when we look at the Admiralty jurisdiction of the Federal High Court proper as a topic on its own. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we have traveled from the jettison rules of ancient roads through the wine fleets of medieval Oleron, and then the jurisdictional wars of Tudor and Stuart England, the colonial vice admiralty courts of West Africa, to the vibrant and sophisticated admiralty jurisdiction exercised today by a federal high court, a jurisdiction that many Commonwealth countries envy for its breadth and modernity. The story of admiralty law is the story of commerce triumphing over territorial jealousy, of merchants and mariners creating rules that transcend borders because the sea itself knows no what? Borders. As you emerge as solicitors and advocates of the Nigerian Supreme Court and become the next generation of Nigerian maritime lawyers, remember that you are heirs to a tradition older than the common law itself. A tradition that had always been practical, international, and fearless in adapting to new realities. The sea is rising, trade is growing, and Nigeria is poised to become the maritime hub of Africa. I thank you all for listening, and I welcome your questions, but know that you have listened to us today because perhaps you stumbled on this video or deliberately you subscribe to our channels. If you've not subscribed, please do so. Feel free and follow us on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, now X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. You are at liberty to suggest what else you want us to talk about. Ask your questions. Our team is here to give you the answers that you need. We look forward to hearing from you.